Welcome back to Library Stress YouTube channel. In today's class, we are going to learn how to make this beautiful flare dress with two side pockets. As you can see, it's a bustier dress and it has this beautiful sleeve detail. It's a candy sleeve. It's very beautiful. As you can see, this is what the back of the dress looks like. I'm going to take you through how to cut and sew this in this class. If this is something you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. So we start with the half length. I'm going to mark my shoulder point and my neckline. Then you create your shoulder slope. So from your shoulder, you're going to mark your armhole line, your bust point, your under bust, and your half length for the front. So I'm making the marking here again so that I can have a straight line. So if you want, you can go ahead and label your line so that you don't get confused. So once you have that, you mark your bust span, that's your nipple to nipple, and you connect to the bust point. You divide your shoulder line into two and then link that to your bust point measurement. So now I'm going to go ahead and take my waist dart. I took 1 inch on both sides and then I connected the under bust to the waistline. Then you take your curve ruler to connect to your bust point. So now you determine the depth of your neckline. I use 6 inches, and then on that depth you are going to do a tightening. So I just measured half an inch on both sides and then connected back to my bust point. So the next thing now is to mark your shoulder on your armhole line so that you can create your armhole. So I divided the armhole line into two and came in by half an inch. Then there I marked my round bust divided by 4 to create my armhole line. So after creating your armhole line, the next thing is to take your curve ruler and then link from the second dart leg to your armhole, just as you can see there. So here I'm marking my waist measurement divided by 4, and then I'm going to mark that on my waistline. Please remove the darts that you have taken so that you won't have a shortage. So for my bust dart, I marked 1 inch on the bust point and connected it. That's the difference I have from my front and back half length. So for the back, it's simple. I just mark my shoulder and my waistline, and then you're going to mark your center back. I'm not going to be using a dart for this, so I took the dart on my zipper area. You can see I came in by 1 inch and connected before I draw out my zipper allowance. So now you mark your round bust there divided by 4, your round waist divided by 4, and then you connect them together. So to avoid zipper bulge, I came up by half an inch on the waistline and connected it to this side. So that is it for the back. And with this, you are done with your half length. You just need to grab your scissors and then you cut it out. So now that part that I just marked is very important. Remember, I came down by 6 inches for my front neckline, and then for the back I maintained the armhole length, which is 8 inches. So I have 6 inches for the front and 8 inches for the back. You need to remember that because you are going to need it when you want to create your strap. So for this I have 6 inches for the front and then 8 inches for the back. That is what I have. So whatever it is that you have for yours, you need to remember it as well. So once you do that, you go ahead and cut out your pattern. So I'm going to keep it aside and then we'll work on the flare. So for the flare, you just need your round waist measurement, and the round waist you are working with here is 28 inches. So I'm going to add 2 inches, add 2 inches seam allowance and 2 inches zipper allowance to it, and I have 32 inches altogether. So for the radius of the flare, you mark 32 divided by 3.14, so it's a constant, and that gave me 10.25 approximately. So now for the length, the total length of the dress is 45, so I'm going to deduct my half length, which is 17, so I have 28 inches. So I have 2 inches hemming allowance, so that is 30 inches. So in all, my radius is 10.25 and the length of the skirt is 30 and half. So if you add all of that, you have 4.25. So that is what I'm going to mark on my fabric. So you take your fabric and then you measure the 4.25 in 2 places. So that's the first one. Then I'm going to fold it into 2, 4.25 on both sides. So after folding into 2, you arrange well and then you fold in form of a triangle. So that is how you cut your half circle flare. You fold into two first. So I'm demonstrating that with a paper here again. You fold into two first, then you fold in form of a triangle using your measurements. So once you arrange that properly, you start taking the measurements. Remember, everything we have is 40.25. So I'm going to first measure that out so that I will have a smaller fabric to work with. So from the upper part, you're going to mark your 40.25 all around your fabric. You can see how I'm shifting the tape. So you measure it round and then you connect them together. So after connecting together, you grab your scissors and cut that part out. So once you are done cutting that part, the next thing is to remove the radius from the whole flare. So again, remember our radius is 10.25. So from the upper part here, I'm going to mark 10.25 all around again. That should be your waist, quarter of your waist measurement plus all of the allowance that we added. So I'm just checking that I have up to that. So I'll go ahead and cut it out. So now remember we added two allowances, 2 inches for seam allowance and 2 inches for zipper allowance. So I'm taking out the zipper allowance first for the back. So you can see how I have folded it. I folded 1 inch away. That's 1 inch for both sides of the front of the back, which is going to give me a total of 2 inches allowance that we added. And then we added the extra 2 inches for the seam allowance because we are going to be cutting on the side. It's going to have two pockets. So you can see that I'm cutting the side. That's why I added that extra 2 inches so that I'll use that to join it back. You have to bear that in mind. So I have cut it. I have one piece for the front and two separate pieces for my back. Can you see I'm explaining how you are going to sew it? So now this is the lining. It's the same way you cut the main fabric. It's just that the lining is going to be shorter. For the lining, you can see that everything I have there is just 30 inches. I reduced this by 10 inches, and then after cutting it, I will remove the radius just like I did for the front. So for the radius of this one, I did not add the seam allowance because I'm not going to be cutting the lining by the side. So once you cut the lining as well, you're going to cut out your pocket. Remember I said it's going to be having four pockets. So this is an inseam pocket. I just cut out four pieces, two for each side of the front of the two for each side of the body. So you need four in total, and that is what I am cutting out. So you're going to cut out your pocket. So once you're done cutting your pockets, you're done with cutting. So the next is to sew. So I like to start my sewing with the sleeve, which is the most important part of the tutorial. So we're going to cut out a fabric for our sleeve. So these are the beads I'm using for the sleeve. You can use any size of bead. The white is a bit smaller than the black, so we are using the black bead for this. So to cut out your fabric, you must make sure that your bead is able to pass through the channel that you are creating. This one I have here is 1.5 inches in total, and then I sew quarter of an inch, so I have 1.25 left, and it is able to accommodate my bead. You have to make sure of that. So you are going to turn it out. I have turned it out, and then you start inserting your bead. So you start by threading your needle, and then you leave like 1 inch space before you start. So you leave that space and then you put your needle. So you can pass the needle like twice before you tie. So after passing it, you go ahead and wrap around it and tie it like 2 times very tightly before you start putting the bead. So that's like your starting point. You wrap around it very well and then you tie it very tightly. So after doing that, the next thing is to start inserting your bead. So you pick one of the beads and then put it inside. Then you drag it to the end where you tied. So after dragging it to the end, you take your needle and then pass it from inside to where the bead stops. You bring it out where the bead stops. So once you do that, you also squeeze the bead and then you tie it. Can you see? You like you do what you do is just like molding the bead in with the fabric, and then you tie it around. I added stay to mine so that it can pad the fabric a little bit for more comfort, so that it's not going to be painful. So that is what you are going to do throughout till you get your desired strap length. You can see that I've inserted another bead. I'll pass my needle from inside. Your needle thread must not be showing outside, so you pass from inside and then you use it to mold the bead. You wrap around it and then you tie again. So once you do that, you pick another bead, you put it inside, you pass your needle from inside, then you bring it out where your bead stops, and then you squeeze the bead inside the fabric and then tie around it. So that is just what you are doing. You're going to do this till you have your length, the length that you need for your strap. Remember that we marked 6 inches for the front and 8 inches for the back, which I said you should bear in mind. So that is how we are going to get the strap length for this. So for the front is 6 inches, for the back is 8 inches. You are going to add the two and then I have 14. So depending on how fitted you want it to be, you can remove 1 or 1.5 inches, and that is going to be your strap length. If I remove 1.5, I have 13, and if I remove one, I have 13.5. So these are my straps. I'm making plenty of it. That's why I have a lot of strap. This is what it's going to look like. So to sew it, I have cut my half length and I have added my interfacing to it. I'm only using ST. You can use wording if you want. So I've gone ahead to join the center front and the side front together, and then I notched it on the under bust area. So you're going to use your iron to iron it. So once you iron it, this is what you're going to have. The next thing is to sew our strap. So you're going to break the two strap and then you're going to determine where you want your strap to be. For me, I folded the center front into two and then I marked 4 inches. That's where I want the strap to be in front. So that is where I'm placing my strap. Can you see? You just go ahead and sew. I have sewn it and I'm cutting off the excess that I have there. So once you sew it, you are going to cover it up with your lining so that it can be neat. So you just place the lining on it, you pin it down, and then you take it back to your sewing machine so that you can sew the lining to it. So you sew on the neckline alone. Can you see? I have sewn it. If you want, you can reduce your seam allowance or you notch it. So once you do that, you're going to turn it out and this is what you're going to have. Okay, so now you're going to bring the back. Once you bring the back, you measure where you want the strap to be at the back as well, and then you notch that point. So once you notch it, the same thing you did for the front, you are going to place the strap. You can see that I'm reducing the excess that I have on the strap. You are going to place the strap where you notched at your center back, where you want to put your strap, and I'm pinning it to it like this so that I don't make mistake. Then I'll take it to my sewing machine to sew. So once you are done sewing it, you're going to use your lining to also turn it out. It's the same process just like we did the for the front. So I have done that now and then I'm turning everything out. So if you do it like this, your strap is going to be inside the lining and the main fabric. It's not going to show outside. So this is what we are going to have. Now we are going to iron the neckline properly. So you take your iron and then iron it properly before you sew this side. So this is me ironing my neckline. This is the back. You make sure you iron it flat so that it can be neat. It's very important because the beads are quite heavy, so you don't want them to be turning the fabric for you. So you make sure you iron it. So I've ironed the two back. For the front, I'm going to be using my bust arm. Remember, it's a bustier. I don't want it to be flat. So I'll just place my bust arm under it and then iron the neckline properly. Iron the neckline and take it to the side. So if you want to have your side seam opened, you can turn the side as well, but for me I want to do inseam for the side. That is why I just turned the neckline so that I can do my inseam. I don't want to have my side seam opened. Remember, it's a tube, so I don't want the seam allowance to be showing. I'm doing inseam for this. That's why I just used lining to turn the neckline for the front, and then for the back I turned the neckline and the zipper area. I left the side still opened. So you're going to iron properly, and when you're done ironing, you place the front and back on each other like this, and then I'm going to flip one of the lining over. Then I will sew with my seam allowance. So once you are done doing this, your seam allowance is going to be inside, it's not going to show. So that is what I have done here, and then flipping it now, you can see that you don't have any seam allowance by the side. You can use any method. If you want your seam allowance to show, you can also do that. So this is what the half length looks like. I'm going to iron it and then sew my skirt to it. So for the skirt, you can see the half length. This is the skirt. I've sewn the pockets already to the skirt. I've sewn the pockets, I've closed the side seam. So I just place the waist of the skirt on the half length, and then I'm going to sew it and then use the lining that I cut to turn it out. So once I do that, I'm going to fix my zipper to it, and the dress is ready. So this is it. I have done that, and then I have also fixed the zipper. So this is what it looks like. Can you see how clean the inside is? And this is what it looks like on the. So this is what the dress looks like on the mannequin. You can see how beautiful it is. I can see how bold the candy sleeve detail is. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. This is what the back of the dress looks like. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.